I have great respect for love. I'm especially fond of how love starts. I remember for me once, love started back in 1979. I was in the Army, so was she. We were at the enlisted club. I saw her going up to get a couple beers. There she was, blue jeans, blue plaid shirt, dishwater blonde hair going down the back of it. You know, dishwater blonde hair goes perfect with a blue plaid shirt, like Chuck's got on there. I saw her saunter on over with her two Tucker beers over the table. She was sitting with my friend Lurch from St. Cloud. It was a name that served Lurch well, like in the Addams Family. I moseyed over. I found out her favorite song was Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. Oh, she had my heart right there. But this is not the start of love I'm going to tell you about today. The start of love I'm going to tell you about today happened in the 1930s. We'll start with Dudley. Dudley was a semi-pro baseball player, played for the Roosters. They'd barnstorm from one town to the other, playing the local team. This gave all the small town folks something to talk about at their virtual water coolers that were barber shops or petrol stations. That's gas stations for you newer folks. Dudley was a Midwest legend. Dudley was such a hitter. Dudley had a ritual. He'd step up to the plate and would strike fear into the pitcher's heart because he knew it was coming. I'm not talking about his mighty swing. I'm talking about his pre-hitting ritual. Dudley, right-handed, would stand up there. He would raise his 48-ounce bat and point it straight at the pitcher. Get a little grin on his face. Then he'd wink right at the pitcher. Now, a rookie pitcher might call his catcher out to the mound. Say, should we walk this guy? And the catcher, who was always all-knowing, would say, no, you'll just get him mad. Dudley, one of his legendary performances, one where they were fortunate to play in Miller Park, home of the Minneapolis Millers. Now, Dudley, I think, must have been extra pumped up that day, because the very first pitch, Dudley, of course, did his ritual, and he swung, and that ball traveled. The outfielders didn't even move. They just kind of watched. The fans in the lower deck of left field, they just kind of watched too. Now, there were some in the second deck, some fans. They did start to rise up, thinking they could catch this baseball, but it just kept on rising and rising. Now, Miller Park is surrounded by steel girders to hold it up. And as it was, Dudley's rocket hit one of these steel girders. They say it hit that steel girder so hard that it caused simultaneously every toilet in Miller Park to flush. And some people were sitting on them at the time. So that was Miller Park. But Dudley's team played all throughout the Midwest. And there was a game in Duluth. It was a game where Dudley was facing a rookie pitcher. He heard he had a pretty good arm. That's all right. Dudley can handle this. Dudley did his ritual, pointing his bat, grinning, winking his eye. And he still had his bat out when that pitcher did a quick pitch and got a strike on him. That didn't sit too well with Dudley. He just smiled and tipped his hat at the young pitcher, quick pointed and reeled back his bat. He was ready this time. The pitcher reeled back, and he gave him that same fastball, and a fastball it sure was. But this time, Dudley swung at a mighty contact he made. But he was just a little behind this speedy fastball. When you're behind a fastball, you swing late. It goes off to the right-hand side. It was a foul ball. Went right into the stands. In the stands that day was Edna. Now, Edna wasn't paying too much attention to the game. And as it happened, Dudley's foul ball hit her, just grazed her, but still hit her, in the left eye. The game stopped. Everybody grew silent because they knew Dudley had hit a rocket, and that rocket had hit a fan. Dudley dropped his bat. He ran over to the stands, hopped the fence, and went right up all 4 rows to where Edna was sitting, injured, because he was concerned. He loved his fans, and he had hurt one of his fans, and that hurt him. He put his arm around her, and he motioned the trainer come up. She said, well, I'm okay, it's my fault. He says, no, it's my fault. He put his arm around, he motioned to the trainer, because the trainer had something that could help here. See, after every game, Dudley had a steak. And Dudley had a steak on ice down in the dugout. Dudley had the trainer bring that steak up. And Dudley took himself out of the game immediately. He had his arm around Edna, and he held that cold steak up against her left eye. That's what doctors did with the potential shiners back then. So after the game, Dudley was still saying, I owe this girl, this Edna, something. So they went down to Arnie's Bar and Grill. He said, well, why don't I buy you a couple of highballs? Now, if you don't know, highballs are what they used to call mixed drinks back then. Edna, being a good northern Minnesota girl, as all northern Minnesota girls are good, ordered a whiskey and 7-Up, and so did Dudley. They had a couple. They took that steak and put it to good use. They had Arnie grill it up, and they split that steak. And then Edna, she said, well, Dudley, you really ought to polka while you're up here. Now, Dudley'd heard about polka, but he wasn't much of a dancer. He always said, the distance between my brain and my feet is pretty far. It seems like the message often gets garbled and my feet get confused. And they did that night, but they still had fun polkaing. Well, Edna went on to kind of follow Dudley around the circuit. And they dated. So Dudley had given her a ring around her eye. But about 6 weeks later, he gave her a ring around her finger, too. They got married at the end of that season, walked through trestles of baseball bats held up like this. The preacher asked Dudley, do you take this girl to be your lawfully wedded wife? He said, I do. He asked Edna, and she said, you betcha. Dudley and Edna were married for 56 years. They had 5 children. One of them, my good friend Mary Schrant, was married to our friend Dave Schrant. They just made 40 years of marriage. Must be something that's inherited. But it's good love. But Dudley and Edna, they passed. And he's playing town ball again now up in heaven with his celestial all-star team. And Edna's in the stands cheering, as it should be. Dudley hits them balls, but none of them go foul anymore. They always go fair. True love continues on through decades, as it should. Enough said. Madam Toastmaster.